Quick new intro, this video got flagged yesterday, presumably for some of the topics that it deals with, so I guess keep in mind that The Last of Us deals with some like pretty intense topics. I put little warnings before everything comes up, and I've used some different language, but otherwise it's essentially the same video, so thank you all so much for watching, and shares are appreciated if you enjoy it. The Last of Us HBO adaptation is finally here! For those of you who don't know, I am a huge fan of The Last of Us. I'm a big fan of a lot of Naughty Dog games in general, but The Last of Us in particular is just such an amazing piece of fiction and a delight to the gaming medium. I love the characters, I love the world, I love the flip on a genre that we're all fairly familiar with, the moral consequences. Actually, I have a video talking about the second game where I also talk about my thoughts on the first game, which should honestly feel a lot like my regular videos because the game is just so story driven that you don't have to be a gamer to enjoy it. Check that out below. So when I found out that HBO was doing an adaptation, I was tentatively hyped as heck. They had the blueprint, they just needed to execute it, and overall, I think they nailed it. I don't think it's perfect, but aspects of it definitely are. And I'm gonna go through a lot of those larger thoughts. This might not feel as in-depth as some of my other videos covering shows, but I'm reviewing this more as someone who's familiar with the source material, but you should be able to follow along even if you haven't seen it, but you all really should just watch the show. So I'm just gonna start with some light spoiler to no spoiler thoughts, just going over the general premise and the reason that they're on the journey they're on before diving into specifics. Honestly, we're gonna be diving into spoilers pretty early on, so take that for what you will. But before diving in, I gotta talk about today's sponsor that kept me caught up on The Last of Us while traveling, Surfshark VPN. The Last of Us pretty much started airing at the worst possible time. 4 of the 9 episodes played while I was out of the country, meaning that I wasn't gonna have access to my Canadian streaming service, Crave. But thanks to Surfshark VPN, being away from home didn't hold me back at all. All I had to do was connect to a Canadian server location so the internet thought I was back home, and boom, I was able to access my Crave account from the States. And you can take advantage of features like this no matter where you live. Say there's something you want to watch, but it's only available on another country's streaming service. Just connect to one of Surfshark's thousands of different server locations on any one of your devices, and that's where your internet will think you are. And because of all the traveling I do, I'm constantly on public Wi-Fi, so Surfshark helps me feel more secure by encrypting my personal data. It's super fast, secure, blocks unwanted ads, and if you use code JEDI, you can save a whopping 83% off your subscription, plus get 3 months free. They also offer a 30-day back money guarantee if you're not completely satisfied, so make sure to click the link in the description down below so you can check out Surfshark for yourself and its many features. But for those of you who don't know the general premise of The Last of Us, because I saw so many people just tossing out, we already have The Walking Dead, it's my parents who will watch every variation of shitty network, medical, cop, paramedic, or firefighter show. So even if this show essentially was the same idea as The Walking Dead, we already have like 3 different spin-offs of that show. We could have something different in the post-apocalyptic sector with infected things. But they are still fundamentally different. While there is an infection that's wiped out humanity, the style of infected are different enough to keep The Last of Us feeling unique. Like they essentially go through stages of growth in the infection rather than decay. And that's because it's a cordyceps infection, essentially a parasitic fungus that takes over the host, so the longer someone's infected, the more that fungus spreads. And I just love the way the show established this initial theoretical concerns over a cordyceps virus in humans with a fake ABC broadcast from 1968. It was so tense, so effective, and I thought it was filmed so well that I was like, is this actually a dramatization of something that did happen?
Billions of puppets with poisoned minds.
So if that happens,
we lose.
But the show does switch up some stuff with the infected. In the game, anytime they're going through closed off spaces or buildings, they have to wear gas masks because the infection doesn't just spread through bites and scratches, but spores in the air as well. But in the show, it switched to these tendrils that can be spread through bites, scratches, or ingestion, which makes for some real uncomfortable scenes. They also turn them into a hive mind in the show, so if you make contact with an infected or one of their roots, you can wake up or alert others in the area, which absolutely adds tension. Though I don't feel like they use that quite as much as they could have. But the main area I feel like this deviates from other shows with infected or any kind of post-apocalyptic scenario is that it isn't a story of general survival. Most of this story is taking place 20 years into the infection and collapse of humanity. There's been some kind of order reestablished in different areas and people have settled into a new norm. Our main characters are specifically on a mission outside of general survival. Though I guess in the grand scheme of things, it is still some manner of survival, but like, you get what I mean. It's that specific dynamic and relationship between our leads, Joel and Ellie, that makes the story so amazing to me and why the show works so well.
Maria is family, actually.
Oh shit. Congrats. Joel, say congrats.
Congrats.
Because they nailed it! Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal are amazing, and if you're still against Bella as Ellie, your reasoning has to be outside of their ability to play the character. If it was 100% because you wanted someone to look as close to Ellie as possible, that's a lot less egregious, but I'll take someone who can crush the role over someone who just happens to look the part any day of the week.
If she so much as twitches.
Don't.
So part of what makes their dynamic so special is that it matches what they need. The exact reason they'd each have for not wanting to get close to the other is the exact reason they need the other, which is laid out immediately from the first episode, at least on Joel's side. Fans of the game know the gut-wrenching opening act, but the show manages to nail it and expand on it. The game starts not by thrusting us into Joel's perspective, but his daughter Sarah's, before everything around her goes to shit and they're on a frantic mission to escape the city. The show does the same thing, and they do it perfectly. The whole scene with them in the truck and the way it tracks feels exactly like the game and has the same effect of locking you in with them. But then it brings you around to the entire previous day with Sarah as well. So we get more time, more dynamic with her and Joel, and slowly trickling in that something isn't quite right in the world, which I think was a great choice for the TV show that wouldn't really have translated well to a video game. Like that dog knowing what's up, my god. Point being, the whole thing still feels like an absolute gut punch even for the people who know exactly what's coming, which is Sarah's death the moment they think they've reached safety.
My daughter's hurt. Her ankle.
Stop right there.
We're not sick.
So knowing that's what happened to Joel the day the entire world fell apart, you can absolutely see why he'd struggle to make any kind of personal connection with a young girl after 20 years of misery. And on Ellie's end, she's been raised in a world without parents, losing all the people who've meant the most to her with just a letter from her mom. Letter doesn't seem to be in the show, my bad, but a major part I always loved was it saying that even through all this shit, even while she's dying, Ellie's mom still stressed that life is worth living. And now she's being pawned off on someone she's never met and doesn't trust. And the reason they're on this mission together, Ellie's immune to the infection. And they get off to a great start. So the mission is to get her out of the government-controlled federal quarantine zone and take her to a rebel group known as the Fireflies who have doctors working on a cure. And this is dangerous on a few levels because quarantine zones will kill anyone trying to get in or out. And then once you're out, you're going to be dealing with any number of infected, different communities that have popped up, and the groups with nothing but terrible intentions. But that's just the premise and objective. This is a story of found family, trust, the value of life outside pure survival, morality, ethics, some smatterings of different governing styles, trauma, and the connection between two people who didn't know they needed the other, essentially love across multiple characters, rarely ever romantic, and the different ways we engage with it, the things it makes us do. So now that we have the premise, what are my general thoughts? On a technical level, it's gorgeous. It looks amazing. There was a lot of care put into finding ways to infuse imagery from the game into scenes of the show. There's lots of little Easter eggs and fun things to notice for fans of the game that won't be distracting to viewers of the show, like Frank having Joel's classic shirt, voice actors from the game being featured as characters in the show. So Troy Baker, who voiced Joel, is James. Ashley Johnson, who voiced Ellie, and Gretchen Grundler plays Ellie's mom. Perry was Tommy's voice actor Jeffrey Pierce, and one of the nurses from the last episode was Abby's voice actor Laura Bailey. Ish being featured from the Underground Hideout, the comic book from the game that Ellie loves. Hell, there's even an Uncharted Easter egg because that's also a Naughty Dog game. Tessa's Later is Nathan Drake's brothers, though I only realized that from a Naughty Dog Twitter account. But speaking of, big spoiler for episode 2, I'll give you a second to jump ahead like 20 to 30 seconds. Big spoiler coming, Tess's death scene. Disturbing. The way that Infected can tell she's already one of them, and then the very weird tendril reach out scene before she manages to blow the place up. Disgusting. Like the cordyceps reaching out to the other cordyceps to speed things along as assault is so gross. Maybe to the point of unnecessary. Even I felt violated. Like whoever thought of that is a sick and must have a lot of job security. But stuff like that was just a really interesting way to set it apart from the game. But my main complaint is that I just don't think the show was long enough. I don't necessarily think I'm being super deprived of anything, I just want more of what's already here. It almost feels like the show was speedrunning itself and there's no reason to. Like, take your time, sweetie. Especially the finale. That was like a streamlined 43 minutes when I was expecting an extended hour-plus episode. It simultaneously manages to flesh out side stories while still feeling like it's cutting out any pieces of available fat. And guys, you can leave the fat on while you cook, like get us that extra flavor. And the show has plenty of flavor. It's rich as hell, but like it could be gourmet, like maybe give us some sides. It's really just full Kylo Ren energy here. But the scenes with Joel and Ellie are just perfect. Like Pedro and Bella's chemistry is just amazing as they pull down each other's walls. And while I will always appreciate strong character progression and emotional hitters over action scenes, I do think the show could have infused some more infected moments. Even if it's not full-on attacks and just stealth dodges and near misses, like the world of infected doesn't even seem like that much of an inconvenience in this show. They made all these subtle changes to how they work. It would have been nice to see a bit more tension from that at times. Another thing I loved is the way the earlier intros did little setups for how the infection spread and how it was handled. Like the scene in Indonesia with the scientist and the military guy, who, by the way, Yayu here was fantastic in the Rich Brian movie Jamojaya. But that slow realization between the two of them of how fucked the entire world is like so good. Like the terror that would cause. And I wish there was more of that because it's so cool. Like I know episode 3 starts with a brief little flashback when they come across a mass grave before we get the full Bill and Frank episode, but if we had just gotten a bit more of that in future episodes, it would have been so satisfying to me. I just thought it was a really great and easy way to amplify the story outside the game and build out the world. I just love lore. What can I say? Half the reason I didn't love the new Evil Dead is because they teased the lore too much. Heads up, you are no longer safe from any spoilers. But speaking of episode 3, holy shit, what a flip up on that story. For those who don't know, warning for a very sensitive topic, Frank ends up getting fed up with Bill, leaves him, gets bit, and makes sure he doesn't turn, to put it as PG as possible, for YouTube. It's absolutely implied that they were in a relationship, which a lot of people choose to ignore, but the show definitely steered into, and takes a very different approach where the two live a long and beautiful life together, and live so comfortably that they get to the point where Frank gets sick of non-infection causes and wants to go out on his own terms, and the two decide to go out together. Shit, it fucking hits. Like I couldn't talk for a solid chunk of time after I finished the episode because my mind was just spent. I will say that I thought the setup was a little bit fast. Like, oh, hello, can I come in for dinner? 6 already, okay.
Hey, what book is that? Cool, let's hang out tonight. Sex already? Whoa.
But damn, what a fucking episode that still manages to tie back into the central story of Joel and Ellie. That Bill knows that Joel and him are the same. They have a job to do, protect the people they love.
Because there was one person worth saving. That's why men like you and me are here. And God help any motherfuckers who stand in our way.
He might have meant it for Tess, that might have made Joel feel like shit for failing after he failed to save his daughter, but now it's gonna be for Ellie. And this is where we start getting some solid development between the two of them, because Ellie refuses to not make a mark on him.
Well, don't you look pretty?
Shut up.
And Joel can't help but care for her. Like, we got a pun book here!
Did you know diarrhea is hereditary?
What?
It runs in your genes.
That is so goddamn stupid.
You laughed, motherfucker.
I didn't laugh.
They're great. We love them. Now, another difference from the game is that Tommy, Joel's brother, doesn't seem to be completely estranged from Joel. He's just apparently stopped answering him, but it's to a similar outcome. Tommy joins the Fireflies because he's become deeply bothered by the inhumanity settling in on Joel and the way the military was running the quarantine zones, before leaving the Fireflies for not agreeing with what they're doing and settling down with Maria in Jackson, who's played by Tara from True Blood in the show. We love that. Love her.
The only people who can betray us are the ones we trust.
In the show, Joel was specifically trying to find Tommy because they lost contact, and that's part of why he and Tess agreed to take Ellie. Marlene says they'll get whatever they need to travel if they get Ellie out of the Boston quarantine zone. And what starts as something fairly simple gets progressively more complicated because everywhere they're supposed to find the Fireflies are either overrun or abandoned. Fireflies aren't super effective, but that's okay.
You fight for 20 years and you get nowhere, you're not a rebellion. Just spray paint.
Kind of essentially what they become. But before finding Tommy, they run into Kathleen, aka Melanie Lynskey time. I love esteemed character actor Melanie Lynskey, but I'm not entirely sure how I feel about Kathleen as a character. I know a lot of people are arguing that if she was played by a man, people would feel different, but like, I don't think that's the case for me because I genuinely love her in anything she's in. Like, I fully understand her motivations, respect her part in the rebellion as the leader of these people, but I wish we had just seen a little bit more for how they got there, like a little flashback, more about what makes her tick and how people are literally willing to ignore a very obvious impending infection disaster for her revenge. I realize it's loyalty, but I want to see why they're so loyal, not just be told. And I'm always down for an all-consuming revenge plot. I get why they wanted to add a face to the group of hunters looking to hunt down Henry and Sam, and I like the idea of Kathleen being out for revenge against someone who was just doing what he needed to save his brother because it was at the expense of her brother. Like, if he hadn't provided rebellion plans to Fedra to get medicine to save Sam, her brother wouldn't have died. But if he hadn't, his brother would have died. And that's interesting because there's rarely objectively good or bad people in this world doing objectively good or bad things. They're all just trying to survive and protect who matters most. Though we will get to some people that I believe are objectively bad. Though once it hits revenge plot to the detriment of everyone around you, it's like no longer a just protecting what's good for you. You are just trying to retroactively fix something that can't be fixed.
You think the whole world revolves around him? That he's worth everything?
We love a thematic setup. Though interesting for her to say that because she's ignoring what is essentially an atomic bomb in service of revenge. And that revenge isn't gonna help anybody, it isn't gonna get that group further in life, but ignoring this problem is sure gonna affect people. I feel like it's because we picked up with a character who just hit her burn it all to the ground for revenge arc without seeing the buildup. We know why, but show, don't tell, you're so good at it. It's just the nature of things feeling so contained where Joel and Ellie are just interlopers through these different stories on their journey, and not every episode can completely take us away from our main characters like episode 3 did, and that's okay, it's still great. But that sinkhole essentially turns into Hitchcock's bomb under the table. We know it's gonna go off, it's just a matter of when. And when it does, infected everywhere. Though I will say the tremoring sinkhole ended up feeling more terrifying than the infected actually attacking. Not that that wasn't also effective, and it's another moment that feels like a game. We're still in the action, but we get pulled back to Joel sniping. We see a Big Daddy bloater just to show how these things will just continue to progress with the fungal growth. But these sons of bitches somehow managed to make the Henry and Sam story even more sad. We learn about this guy who's done so much to protect his little brother from the cruelty of the world, and changing Sam to be deaf adds an entire other dynamic to the character and a major struggle. This is a world where your senses are sometimes the only thing you have to protect yourself. Not having one could be a death sentence. So when Sam gets bit, instead of not telling anybody like he does in the game, which was still brutal and heartbreaking for so many different reasons with him just looking out the window, he tells Ellie, and she wants so badly to believe that her blood could make him immune too. Obviously it couldn't possibly be that easy. When she wakes up the next morning, he's turned. So he attacks her, and again, warning for a sensitive topic leads to the most brutal scene of Henry being forced to intervene and then immediately decide he can't live with what he's done to his own brother. Fucking bleak! The split hesitation of wanting to blame Joel, the horror of what he did, ah! Then to just really twist the knife, Ellie writes "I'm sorry" on the magic slate and leaves it on their graves. Why would you do this to me? And the survival guilt she must feel, like why out of everyone does she get to survive? But episode 6 ends up being a real turning point for Joel and Ellie. Joel finding Tommy and questioning his ability to protect Ellie at all, how weird it is for this town to essentially function normal, no Fedra, no rebel groups. That Tommy is about to have a kid settled in this new way of living that Joel's been rejecting, connecting with because of everything he's lost.
Just because life stopped for you doesn't mean it has to stop for me.
They also upped that timeline. He's not having a kid with Maria until the second game. But as much as Joel is struggling here, Ellie is too. This isn't normal for her. Kids watching movies instead of running drills and prepping for future Fedra duties. She can't relax and can't let herself be treated like a normal kid. She's also worried about her dynamic with Joel changing because of everything she's lost. It's this whole situation where Joel's completely given up on himself. He's terrified of getting her killed, thinks he's going to fall apart before he can get her where she needs to be. So he wants Tommy to take over for him.
I saw a man kill his own brother to save her. Well, I just watched. And today I thought that dog was gonna tear her apart because it smelled something on her. And all I did was stand there. It's all I've ever done. It's failure.
You want me to take her?
I'm just gonna get her killed, I know it.
Which she hears and upsets her, but now she understands him better too. She knows that he's lost a daughter, knows that this has all been hard for him, but he's the only one she trusts and the only one she has.
So don't tell me that I'd be safe with somebody else, because the truth is, I would just be more scared.
You're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad. We're going our separate ways.
And right now they need each other.
You came here to say goodbye or something?
No, you deserve a choice. I still think you'd be better off with Tommy.
Let's go.
Okay.
It's fucking beautiful! But the beauty, it cannot last. The Firefly base was abandoned with light instructions for where they might have gone, Salt Lake City. They too went west. And almost immediately they get attacked. Joel gets stabbed, kills one, gets away, and passes out. Which slides us into the last time that Ellie lost the person that mattered most to her, Riley. AKA stab my fucking gut.
They chose me. I mattered to them.
You mattered to me first.
Why? It's this little glimpse into Ellie's life, what it was like being a kid growing up under federal control with no parents, how she's gay, which was all part of the game, confirmed in the DLC, but still obvious before that, and people still flipped out about when the trailer for Last of Us 2 dropped. And you don't see her have to kill her first crush, best friend, and person that matters most to her, but you know it's coming. They thought they were gonna die together, but we know that nothing's gonna happen to Ellie. She'll be left begging Riley not to go before having to kill her, and then just slowly waiting for it to happen to her, and then it never comes. So not only does Ellie realize in this moment that she's immune to something that destroyed the entire world, she lost the most important person in her life at the same time. All this swirling back to her trying to keep Joel alive, the last person she has. Which makes the next episode all the more brutal when she almost has the upper hand in a situation to get him food and medicine before ending up in the clutches of the objectively bad. David, and game fans know all about David. It plays out largely the same, but they cut out the part of them being attacked by infected, and honestly, I might have left that in, even if it was just one, because again, it all just felt very streamlined. Just give me more, make the episode like 55 to 60 minutes. And I'm not trying to sound greedy by wishing they'd include more, because they do expand on the story. We get a little intro of David's dynamic with his group, which I liked. But otherwise, their interactions are largely the same and just as disturbing, if not more at times. Just like in the game, David gets the hunch that whoever Ellie wants the antibiotics for might be the same person that killed someone from his group. In the game, it was a little bit more of a rampage, but who's counting? But also, in both scenarios, they attacked first because looking for food means something very different for David's group. They do a nice setup for this when a young daughter asks David when her father was going to be buried. You find out that the father was the man Joel killed at the university. In game fans knowing why he's probably not going to get buried. And honestly, knowing what to expect doesn't make the impact any less intense. Her escaping and trying to lead them away from Joel before getting caught, Joel having to go on a delirious rampage to get to her, leading to the ominous torture scene that they perfectly pulled off. And it makes sense that he'd immediately go this extreme. Not only have these people been hunting him down viciously, they took the person that matters most to him that he promised to protect, and he's gonna do anything he can to get to her as fast as possible.
I ain't telling you shit.
It's okay.
No.
I believe him.
No.
So good! Like, I know we're not supposed to cheer on torture, but they certainly weren't gonna spare him for shit. And Ellie definitely wasn't okay for a couple reasons that the show really drives home. David is like the twisted father figure compared to Joel. He comes across as more tender, caring, and charismatic, but underneath, he's a monster. For one, David's group are cannibals. The show presents it as only a select group knowing, so even though winter might be a valid reason to not bury someone, there just isn't gonna be a body to bury in the spring because they're eating it. In the show, Ellie just suddenly notices an ear on a butcher block while she's locked up, but the game has her waking up to an arm being chopped off.
For what it's worth, this is just deer meat, I swear.
The area they are a lot more overt with in the show is that David would happily accept Ellie into his group while hoping to win her over.
I'm a shepherd surrounded by sheep, and all I want is an equal. Imagine the life we could build.
But after she breaks his fingers like a badass...
Ow! Tell them that Ellie is a little girl who broke her fucking finger!
They decide that human veal is on the menu, which again leads to this amazing scene of her showing her bite, how they'll be infected for eating her, giving her enough time to get away. I know I'm focusing in on this episode the most, but shit, it's all so good. And then they make the one-on-one fight scene with David even more intense. Warning, things get very assaulty here, nothing happens, but you absolutely know what the intentions are, so if you want to avoid, skip ahead like 25 seconds.
I've decided you do need a father, so I'm gonna keep you, and I'm gonna teach you. The fighting is the part I like the most.
Show makes it very clear what his intentions are. I thought the game did too, especially with her reaction after the fact, but yeah, show ain't leaving any questions. Which makes it all the more heartbreaking when Joel does get to her. She's safe, but just narrowly made it out of a heinous situation, a situation where she almost lost full control over what was gonna happen to her.
Look, it's me. It's okay, baby girl. I got you.
Both handle the fallout here really well. Joel is just trying to keep her spirits high while she's undoubtedly changed, my god. Joel also shares a lot of vulnerability with Ellie, how he almost chose not to continue living after Sarah died, and lets her know that she's the one that healed him. After 20 years of being a robot, she brought him back.
So time heals all wounds, I guess.
It wasn't time that did it.
But they almost immediately get attacked by the fireflies they were looking for, bringing them to the hospital. And our final episode, which I maintain is just entirely too short, especially when about 10 minutes of it are just dedicated to a scene from the past. But I do love how it started. We get a scene of Ellie's mom giving birth and being attacked by an infected. And the tension we get in that intro is just what I would have liked to have seen from infected in more areas of the show. Like, I don't know if I fully buy them leaving a pregnant woman alone in the woods when she's about to give birth, but the sound of the runner going up the stairs before crashing into the room? Holy fucking shit, that was so intense! Now the show does take some pretty big liberties here. It is implying that the reason Ellie's immune is because her mom was bit just as she was being born. That some kind of rapid process happened when the infection hit the bloodstream and then went to the placenta but caused immunity instead of infection. It's only ever implied in the game that Anna got bit within a day of Ellie being born, but not necessarily so close that it would be happening during the birth. Maybe that was their plan. But I get the desire to provide a reason. Because what does that really change? Are you going to intentionally infect a bunch of mothers with the disease so that the baby is immune, but then you have a perfectly fine adult dead? But now we're just speed running to the end. Joel finds out that in order to potentially make a cure or vaccine, Ellie's gonna have to die because they need her brain. And even if they had a 100% guarantee, which they don't, he was never gonna let that happen. He made the decision to protect that girl from everything, and it's not stopping now.
You've just come after her.
But it's also a selfish decision. He doesn't want to live in a world without her. What good's a cure if the only person you love is gone? It's not just redemption or catharsis for failing to save his own daughter. He had that moment already. It's protecting his own and what he loves no matter the cost. It is confirmed later that given the option, Ellie would have sacrificed herself for the chance at a cure.
Everything I've done, it can't be for nothing.
So what would she decide, huh? Because I think she'd want to do what's right.
It's the one thing she believed gave her life any kind of purpose. Even if that's not true, existing as she is purpose enough. But I can see why in a world like this, being the one person that might be able to stop the infection would carry a lot of personal weight. I feel like I talked about this a lot in my video about the second game, so feel free to check that out. But this moment changes their dynamic forever because she doesn't believe him when he tells her there's no way to make a cure, that they sent her away. But she chooses to believe the lie in that moment so she doesn't have to consider the alternative. So she doesn't have to believe that the one person in the world she trusts lied to her.
You find something new to fight for. And maybe that's not what you want.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything you said about the fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
Now the scene building into this, fantastic. I actually really love that they paired the rampage with somber music. It really just added this weight to Joel's actions and what he was choosing to do. It also felt like the game where you just have to forage for new bullets and weapons as he's working his way through. And they zero hesitation in taking out that doctor because there is no question in his mind that this is the right thing to do. Despite Anna's requests, Marlene is willing to make that sacrifice for which she believes is the greater good, and Joel's not having it. I was worried that they'd feel tempted to flesh out this moment a little bit, but no, Joel had a mission and any obstacle was getting handled.
I won't let you take her.
Should have put the scalpel down, buddy. You can argue that he condemned the world, but even if they made a vaccine or a cure, society's collapsed. There's gonna be countless people who want things to stay exactly the same because now they have the power. And like, how do you even distribute a vaccine in a world like this? I feel like it'd get to Fedra and they'd still keep those quarantine zones up because they can't reverse the infection in people already infected. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be good to have, I just think people overstate the idea of Joel condemning humanity. But you know what? Even if he was, sometimes that's all it comes down to. The one person that makes it all worth living. So fuck the world and fuck Knock at the Cabin. Joel's protecting his own. His story is just so good, I cry. But that's about it. They go on. Ellie heavily conflicted by the lies she knows she's been told, and Joel knowing that he'd make the same damn choice every time. I strongly recommend anybody who enjoyed the show checking out the game. I think that the show does a really good job introducing you like the major beats and some additional info and that stuff to make it engaging for people who already played the games. But there's just this increased level of tension that the show never quite achieves compared to the game. But overall, I really loved it, and I'd rather be wanting more than being in a world where I feel like they just completely dropped the ball in the spirit of the story. Though again, I need to clarify, the way I want more doesn't feel like I'm selfish, I want more because it was all so good. The show just does feel a little bit thin at times because of how streamlined it is, but when it's firing on full cylinders, oof. Like even the subtle stuff, like focusing on the watch Sarah fixed for his birthday that got shot when she did, that he still wears every day. The decision to kill that Fedra guard to get Ellie out. But let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Did you love the show? Did you hate it? Were you fans of the games or not? But thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my social medias are listed down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.